It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you today, as I always am, because I actually have a person in front of me that I had on the podcast a while back. And for some of you that remember when the pandemic hit, things went crazy, we all went virtual, and I had a chance to connect with an individual named Doug Riverman Allen. And Doug Allen is the owner of Jose's Bar and Grill right up on 412. And that's in Springdale, right?
It's actually Tawnytown.
It is Tawnytown. Yep. Okay. All
Springdale
right.
zip code.
Springdale zip code. Right. Close enough. Yeah. So, but anyway, Doug is well known. They've got one of the best brunches, if not the best brunch in Northwest Arkansas. The food is amazing. Great salsa, the whole 9 yards. But Doug is just a salt of the earth guy. He's a native from Northwest Arkansas. And when I first came to reach out to him, the episode was episode 63, and we talked about don't give up, right? And it was just at the height of the pandemic. Things had just started really hitting the fan, and there was a lot of uncertainty. And his episode was a very powerful episode of momentum for a lot of people. And we got a lot of feedback. It was one of our most listened to episodes. And so, we said, let's bring this guy back on. And to top things off, he wrote a book during the pandemic. So, he decided that he wasn't busy enough trying to keep his restaurant afloat. Right. I'm going to write a book too. So without further ado, I want to welcome Doug Riverman Allen to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast for a second time. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me again. It's an honor, I tell you.
Absolutely. Well, man, I'm so good. I'm so glad that you're here. For anybody that didn't listen to episode 63, I would love for you just to give us the quick Cliff Note version of who Doug Riverman Allen is.
Sure. I own Jose's. I've owned Jose's for about 18 years. And when our last podcast with you, we talked about, the pandemic of when they shut down restaurants and all that kind of stuff. And, we had to flip our restaurant to a grocery store and get creative and sell sanitizer and bulk grocery items and masks and all that kind of meat.
Meat. Yep. I bought meat from you, and I got sanitizer and meat. That's a crazy combination.
Exactly. So, we flipped it into a grocery store, and, we didn't give up, and it saved my business. It helped out the community, and I'm still here running Jose's and that was in 2020. Has it already been?
I know. It's 2 years.
2 years.
2 solid years. So
it was crazy, but we made it work, and we did not give up.
Yeah. No, I mean, I certainly applaud you. And the one thing that I will take away is because we follow each other on Facebook, and you always had a lot of encouraging words. And I think your overall message was just keep going, keep going. Don't stop. Like kind of like Dory in that fish movie from Pixar, and I'm blinking on the name now, but it's like keep swimming, and don't give up.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
So,
it felt like I was swimming against the current. That's for sure. There was a lot of obstacles. From lack of employees to the bills are still coming in, trouble getting certain types of products and stuff like that. So it definitely felt like I was swimming against the stream.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, okay. So with that in mind, so for everybody listening, you picture that as the backdrop. You wake up one day and say, you know what? That's not enough. I need to write a book right now.
Yeah. You don't, it sounds crazy, but, I make tacos for a living, but the river is my passion.
Right. That's why they call you Riverman. When Gary had told me about you, and he was like, yeah, you need to talk to Doug Allen. And then I realized how we were connected anyway. For just a little bit of backstory, both of our kids swam on the Aqua Hogs at the same time. And his son and daughter, for a while, we kind of all carpooled together. There were a couple of families because he doesn't live far from me over on the east side of Fayetteville. And we all carpooled together. But I did not know you. I knew your wife. But more importantly, I knew your kids because I was driving them back and forth. My wife was, and we were all sharing. And so I thought it was interesting, but you are just like, hey, you are the Riverman. I mean, that's your thing.
Yeah. It's just, like I said, make the tacos for a living, but I love the Kings River. I grew up on the river. So, during the pandemic, I had talked to some friends. I think we may have even had a few beers, and they said, Doug, gosh, you know everything about the Kings River. You should write a book about it. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll just write a book about it, and what's that saying? Write a book, they said. It'll be easy, they said. It was far from easy. I think it was one of the hardest things, I've ever done.
Yeah.
There was many times, I got fired up in the beginning, and I would write, and I'd outline, and I'd get all excited. And then there was other days I just got really upset with it and got mad at it, threw it in a drawer and didn't pick it up for another couple months. And so, writing a book is just not, it was not easy, but, it was something I knew a lot about. So, I was passionate about it. I got myself organized. Fortunately, I had some great English teachers growing up. I don't know if they'd ever thought that I would write a book, but, I actually took some of what they were teaching me and I was able to put this thing together.
That's awesome. So now what is it about? And I know for people listening to this, a lot of people have heard of the Buffalo River.
Right.
Let's orient folks to where the Kings River is in Northwest Arkansas.
Sure.
You're originally from Eureka Springs.
Yeah,
right?
I'm originally from Eureka Springs. Okay. So within a 5-mile radius here in Northwest Arkansas, and that's the beauty about living in Northwest Arkansas, within a 5-mile radius up in the Boston Mountains, you've got these wonderful rivers. You got the Kings River, you got the Mulberry River, you got the White River, you got the Buffalo River. So you've got all these wonderful rivers starting in the same mountain range right here in Northwest Arkansas. So, what a wonderful place to live that you can access all these streams. They're all floatable, fishable. Of course, everybody knows about the Buffalo River.
Right.
So, some of the lesser known rivers such as the Mulberry or the Kings, not a whole lot of people know about. A lot of people know about the White River because, it's a chain through the lakes. But you have these extraordinary resource water bodies just right out our back door in Northwest Arkansas.
So how similar are the ecosystems of each of the rivers? Do you see commonalities between the Kings River and the Mulberry and the White River versus the Buffalo, or are they each like kind of their own unique river?
There is a lot of similarities in all of them. Obviously, the White River was dammed in the Flood Restoration Acts, 50 some odd years ago.
Okay.
So you've got a series of dams which release very cold water, so you get trout streams.
Yep.
And the Kings River, the Mulberry, the Buffalo, they're kind of what I consider a warm water stream where you'll get more of like smallmouth bass type fishing in those type of streams. So there's a lot of similarities, kind of except for the White, which, like I said, is, it runs through all the way down, into the Arkansas River where it's, it's trout, it's cold water.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And now does the White River run through like Cotter and some of those areas?
It does.
It does.
Yes,
okay. That's what I thought. Cause I know Cotter is big on trout fishing out there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I've fished many times in Cotter, and it's trout capital of the world, as a matter of fact.
Is it really?
I went out to Colorado and I went into a fly shop and I said, hey, where do I need to find some trophy trout? And the guy said, you need to go to Mountain Home, Arkansas. I just kind of looked at him. I was like, oh, that's I'm already from there. He goes, yeah, that's where the best trout fishing is.
Really?
So you got all these wonderful rivers and trout streams and smallmouth streams. And once again, right out your back door in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize that.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, people are starting to discover it. Obviously, there's more and more people moving to Northwest Arkansas, on a weekly basis, but they need to check these things out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What wonderful resources we have.
Man. So what was it for you? I mean, growing up in Eureka, that's a beautiful area. For anybody that has not listening to this, if you haven't been to Eureka, you need to check it out. It is you need to spend a day or two there. There are great restaurants, great stores. I have a couple of stores that I go to that are just in Eureka that I prefer. I really love. So, I would encourage folks to check it out. But, growing up in Eureka, you were in the great outdoors and right. You were just exposed to it. So what really scratched that itch for you when you were younger, and how, was it? I know for me, I was a scout person. I was Cub Scout, Weeblo, Boy Scout. And my Scoutmasters were kind of really introduced me to the great outdoors, along with a former neighbor, Mr. Scott, may he rest in peace. And that's how I got, what was it for you?
Well, I come from a family of biologists. My dad was a microbiologist. My uncle was a marine biologist. We had always been around some body of water, fishing, lake, river. I mean, you name it. So we were big outdoorsmen, but mainly we gravitated toward water. So, as a young child, my dad wanted to move to Eureka Springs. He drove through there, stopped at the Kings River, fell in love with it. And all of a sudden we moved there. So my very, very first memory of being on the Kings River, and it gives me goosebumps thinking about it, was my dad had parked somewhere on the river near what's called Kills Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided he was going to take his fishing pole and a bucket of crawdads that he and Mom had caught, and he was going to walk down the river a little ways and catch a few bass. So I think I was 4 or 5 years old at the time. I may have been a little bit younger, actually. So I looked at my dad and said, man, this is a cool dude with a fishing pole. And he had this bucket of crawdads, and they were, it was cool just looking at the crawdads. So I started following him down the river. My mom didn't see it. And my dad, of course, didn't know I was following him. And I stepped off into a deep hole.
Ooh.
And it still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. And I can still close my eyes and envision the ripples of the water in the minnows slowly, swimming in front of my eyes as I was in this deep water hole, which I thought was deep. It was only 4 or 5 deep, and I was only a few feet tall.
That's a lot for a little kid.
I was drowning.
Yeah.
I was drowning. So I just remember the calmness of it and watching the ripples and the beauty of the water and the fish, then slowly everything started to get dark. And the next thing I know, I was on top of his truck, and he was trying to get every bit of water out of every orifice in my body, I think, while Mom is over there, giving him the what for
right.
for not watching his son and making him nearly drown. So
my goodness.
That was my first experience of the Kings River. And I've had a attachment to that river ever since.
Wow.
So, that wouldn't, as a youngster, that wasn't the only time that we would go to the river. It was a regular basis. Every 2-3 days, we would grab our buckets and fishing poles and catch crawdads. My mom she had to be the world's best barehanded crawdad catcher I've ever seen. She would see a crawdad, turn over a rock, snatch that sucker and put it in a bucket. And, we'd have a great time. And, I didn't grow up with a whole lot of money. So, we actually fished out of that river, to put food on our table.
Yeah.
So, not only was it a recreational resource, but we depended on that for food on the table.
You probably weren't the only family.
Probably not. There's a lot of people that have used the Kings River for that same reason. And, it's kind of a funny, I'm strictly catch and release now when I go fishing and I take people. We were so poor growing up one time, we had to eat fish out of that river for a month straight. I kid you not.
Really?
So we had a 50-pound bag of potatoes, and we ate smallmouth bass and Ozark bass.
Cooked every way imaginable.
Every way imaginable.
What was the favorite recipe?
Oh, it was just fried. It was cornmeal and fried.
That was it. Yeah.
And that was
Keep it simple.
Kept it simple. And I was so tired of fish, Randy. I told myself, I said, if I ever make it one day, I am never going to eat another fish out of this river ever again.
Yeah.
And I have never eaten one since.
Really?
Once I made it, I decided I wasn't going to do it.
You said you weren't going to do it.
So true story, I'm strictly catch and release.
Okay.
But, the Kings River, it's just has such an impact on my family and just, my everyday life around Eureka Springs. And even today, as I live in Fayetteville. So I still actually have a place over on the Kings River.
Okay.
It's very ironic. It's directly opposite of where I almost drowned as a kid.
Really?
So it's
a subtle reminder for you. So
it's a subtle reminder. So it's kind of odd that I have a small cabin over there and on that river at that exact same spot. But it's when I'm not making tacos at the restaurant, I promise you I'm on that river somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, and it's so. One of the things that you do that I really respect you for is that you give back to young people that sometimes aren't exposed to the river the way you were at that age, right? And so you have a program called the Riverman School for Kids. And I know for the past couple of years, twice a year, you would take kids out to the river, teach them how to fish, show them, the whole process so that they can not only learn how to fish, but also appreciate nature. And so could you talk just a little bit about that? And what was your inspiration for that specifically?
Sure. It was during the first part of the pandemic, and these kids had nothing to do, nowhere to go. I think the camps were closed and travel was restricted and all that kind of stuff. So I just put a camp together, at my place on the river and invited 10 kids to come fish. And it didn't matter if they had any experience or not. So a lot of the kids have never held a fishing pole. They've never felt the tug of a fish. They've never caught a crawdad, a hellgrammite. They've never seined for minnows. They've never experienced that. So, I had some sponsorship. I had some people that gave me some fishing poles. So the kids got to take home a fishing pole and a bag of lures and stuff like that. But, they come over, we talk about the river. We talk about how to take care of the river.
Sure.
We talk about what's in the river, then we go for a hike. It's not easy going fishing. Sometimes you got to walk. So I make sure they walk at least a half mile to get where we're going. Then we stop, we grab our buckets, catch crawdads. We hang crawdads from our ear. It's called an Ozark earring. So we have fun with that. We catch hellgrammites, which are a menacing, they look like a centipede with big old kind of pinchers on the front.
Yeah. I've
so the kids, they overcome their fears holding that kind of stuff. And then after that's said and done, we walk another 200-300 yards and then we go fishing. We put the bait on the hooks and then we catch smallmouth and long ear and Ozark bass. And these kids just, you should see the look on their face when they catch a fish or they feel the tug on the line for the first time.
Listen,
it's unbelievable.
It's hard to describe. I'm a big fisherman and I primarily cut my teeth fishing in a reservoir as well as also fishing off of an area there in Washington, D.C. that my grandfather used to take me to. And then I went deep sea fishing, but it's indescribable to say how it feels when you get that first nibble on the line and you're just like, oh, you start to pull back and you get excited and there's just nothing like it.
It's, they're hooked, pun intended. But
right.
Once they catch that fish, they just, they squeal with joy. They want to do it again and again. I've had kids come back 2 or 3 years,
right?
Now to the school because it's so much fun and they learn something new every time.
Yeah. So this sounds like this is going to be ongoing. You're not going to.
I'll probably continue to do that. Okay. I really enjoy the kids. Sometimes it's like herding cats, you know. So all you teachers out there, man, much respect to y'all.
Because mad respect to the teachers.
Mad respect to the teachers.
So that's for sure.
But for the most part, it's pretty rewarding to share something that's so important to me, to those kids.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book, The Riverman's Guide to the Kings River. It's about 104 pages. There's a lot of information. There's pictures. There's maps. Can you maybe walk us through just a little bit about the process that it took to create this book?
Sure. Like I said, it wasn't an easy thing to do. So I came up with an outline. I didn't want a book that was just a very dry guidebook. I wanted something with some history. I knew a lot of history about the Kings River. I had stories of my childhood that I wanted to add in there. I didn't want the book to be dry. I wanted people to be able to get their information out of the book, but I wanted to capture their attention and make them feel like they were on the river when they were reading the book.
Yeah.
So I put a bunch of stories in there of my childhood, the one I just told you about drowning. There's a story about a snake in there. But I also wanted to honor the people that were important to that river before me, such as J.D. Fletcher, Joe Head, Bud Stopple, all those people were, if you were on the river at one time or another, you're probably going to run into those people. And they were legends of the Kings River. So I wanted to give stories about them, describe those characters to the people, and then, hold their attention with the book. Instead of just being something dry with here's the Kings River, go here to put in, here's the fish you catch, So I had seen those guidebooks and I didn't want it to be that. So, that was a little harder probably for me to put together, with all those stories and other stuff. So, it did take me, it took me a couple of years to put this thing together. Cause like I said, I got mad at it. I threw it in the drawer, and then, I finally found someone that was very instrumental, Angela Belford, in helping me put everything together. Okay. So that was very instrumental. And I want to thank her for sure of helping me get this book together. So I was able to piece it all together and have something really, really special.
Yeah. It's funny, because I actually have a book coach right now, and I was telling you that I'm working on a book myself, and it's tough. And I've constantly been reminded, and I've told other people this, we all have a book in us. Whether we choose to write one or not is a whole nother story.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we all have stories to tell. And, I can only imagine. I mean, I read some of the stories that you had in here, and it was just, you kind of bring the Kings River alive through your experience. And I think that's important because we all have experiences, and there are great stories that each one of us has to tell. And so I think this book is a great example. I think a lot of people might find inspiration, not just on how to fish the Kings River, but also in how to take your story and immortalize it on paper.
Yeah.
So, I think that's awesome. Well, what's next for Doug Riverman Allen when it comes to the Kings River? What are you hoping to accomplish? And I might add that I know like the Buffalo River just celebrated 50 years.
Correct.
It's a 50th anniversary. We just had them on from the foundation. We had those folks on the podcast a couple of months ago, and that was really successful because they're doing some really amazing things there on Buffalo River. So what's next for the Kings River?
Not another book, although I may do a second edition, or I might do a coffee table book with some nice photographs. But I think as far as writing, any other book about the Kings, I think that's it. A dream of mine is to actually have some type of outfitter and have more kid camps and educational facilities and stuff like that located not by the Kings River.
Sure.
So I kind of have that on the horizon, working on that a little bit. It's still important that I, make a lot of tacos so I can afford to chase this dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably next on the horizon is figure out how to take people up and down the river and teach them a little bit. And if we educate, we can conserve. So we got to teach people how to take care of the river so it'll be around for your kids and their grandkids. So, that's very important to me, especially with the amount of people that are moving into Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to find out about the mulberry, the Kings, the
white,
obviously the buffalo and the white. So we got to teach them, how to take care of our rivers for sure.
So that each successive generation can really appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So how long is the Kings River?
It's over 90 miles.
Okay. All
as a matter of fact, and it's a north flowing river that runs into Table Rock Lake, which is an absolutely wonderful lake to fish in, swim in, recreational. But so it's a northward flowing river.
Okay.
Free flowing river.
Free flowing.
Fact.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's from a canoeing or kayaking perspective as it compares to like the Buffalo. Is there a fair amount of action on the river?
Oh, sure. There's different sections of the river that are easy to get to. Some are harder. Up the headwaters of the Kings River, there's the Kings River Falls, which is absolutely stunning. It's an easy hike to get to. Not a whole lot of floating up there, but down by the Marble Access, there's these huge bluffs, which you'll see on the cover of the book, that are just absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And I think they rival those bluffs of the Buffalo.
Yeah.
So, and as you get to what I consider the middle part of the Kings, it becomes more riparian, slows down a little bit. There's the trees and the fields and, the farmers on each side of the river. And then, of course, down at the end, it widens out and becomes the Table Rock Lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got you. Man, so there's so much to take in with that river. Well, I mean, I really appreciate you, kind of sharing your insider's guide to the Kings River. And I think that people listening to this will find some real value in terms of those of you that want to go out and kayak or canoe or fish the Kings River. You need to check out the Riverman's Guide to the Kings River. I'm assuming this book is available everywhere for the most part.
It is. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on www.kingsriverarkansas.com.
Okay.
There's a couple local places that carry it. Pack Rat in Fayetteville, Pearl's Book on the Square, and also Collier's carries the book as well.
The drugstore.
Yep.
Okay.
The drugstore.
Cool.
So it's starting to get out there a little bit. That's my next goal is to hit up some other places, but. In the meantime, you can definitely find it in the Fayetteville area or online. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. Doug Riverman Allen, the author of The Riverman's Guide to the Kings River and the owner of Jose's Bar and Grill on 412 there in Tawnytown, and definitely one of the best brunches that you'll find in Northwest Arkansas. I really want to encourage you to check it out, whether you go and have a taco or you decide to get out on the Kings River and you buy his book as a guide for your time out there, you will not be disappointed. Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To subscribe to this podcast, you can check us out on all of the great platforms that exist, like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can rate and review the podcast right there. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. So we'd love for you to connect with us and learn a little bit more about Northwest Arkansas from the perspective of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life right here in the Ozarks. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I will see you here next week. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.